After the Civil War ended, soldiers returned home to start their lives again. Many returned to their families and farms, trading rifles for farm tools, and the history of Mudlavia Hotel begins with one such man, aptly named Samuel Story. Samuel was working on his farmland in central Indiana one day in 1884 when he decided to take a break from digging a drainage ditch and have a drink from a nearby spring. At the same time, he was quite muddy from the ditch digging. The process took several days of mud and drinking the water, and after a while, he was surprised to see that his aches and pains began to subside. Soon, word got out about the curative properties of the spring, and less than 6 years later, the Indiana Springs Hotel was opened. It was built by Harry L. Kramer, who had founded the Sterling Remedy Company. The lavish 5-story, 250-room resort featured buggy riding trails, a golf course, tennis courts, Chinese gardens, goldfish ponds, and a chapel. A 400-acre farm on site fed the guests in the massive dining hall with crystal chandeliers. Imagine F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby mansion as a resort. At the time, it was the only place in the county that had running water and electricity. And of course, guests were given mud baths and then showered in the spring water, which is how its name quickly changed to Mudlavia Springs. For most of the guests who are not here just to enjoy their time, they were given the mud baths and then given a regimen of rest and relaxation. Remember, the hotel was said to cure any and all illnesses, and sick people from all over were coming in the hopes of getting better. As one can guess, such holistic medicine approaches have faded from popularity for the reason that they often don't work. Yes, minerals are good for us, we know that. But when people with terminal diseases were spending their life savings on the hope of getting well found that the mud treatments did little, heartbreak set in. In fact, one man's stay at Mudlavia has been preserved through a series of letters he wrote about his time there. He mentioned being surprisingly lonely, as almost everyone that arrived when he did had left. The days would feel twice as long as the treatment was the exact same thing day in and day out. TVs and cell phones didn't exist to occupy our time back then, after all. Famous guests at the hotel included boxing champion John L. Sullivan, painter James Bingham, songwriter Paul Dresser, and poet James Whitcomb Riley, along with one notorious guest, Al Capone. Capone and his gang are said to have brought their boozing, gambling, and crime, even dumping bodies of men they executed in wells on the property. For a while, it was said that John Dillinger and his gang stayed here and were ambushed, killing all but Dillinger himself, though this is regarded as fiction. While we're here, we met some locals who are actually filling up some water jugs from a spigot that is set up. There are tons of rumors of hauntings, and we will be doing an episode focusing on that on our Ghosts and Legends series on Amazon Prime. But for now, we'll stick with what we know. That's a fresh mark that looks like something like chopped with an axe. After the resort burned in 1920, Kramer promised to rebuild, but looking at the cost to return the hotel to its former opulence, he instead took the insurance money and abandoned Mudlavia. Somebody was tied up in that chair. Yeah, look at this. I don't know if it was for like a movie or like a music video. Or they're actually, that doesn't really look like real blood. Eventually though, another treatment resort was built in 1930, but could not stay afloat in the Depression, and it would see a succession of uses, and from here on out is where history varies, depending on who you talk to. First, it is said that the new Mudlavia was partly owned by a gangster, who began holding his meetings there. Then, in 1949, it opened again as a hotel and sanitarium, which leads many today to incorrectly believe it was a mental health facility. Sanitariums were simply places where the chronically ill could recover. The problem is that after such places faded out with the invention of antibiotics, these empty buildings were now remembered only for holding sick people, which were then lumped in with asylums. Then, in 1957, it converted into the Pleasant Valley Lodge, a 28-bed nursing home. That caught fire in 1968. It was rebuilt and converted to a hotel, restaurant, and lounge known as the Mudlavia Lounge, opening in 1971. 3 years later, a fire struck yet again, and it was abandoned for good. There's a bird. The empty building now became known as a hotspot for drug users, homeless, and even rumored satanic covens until the land was purchased by its current owners in 1980. Before we left, we decided to try some of the water ourselves.
Do you work tomorrow? I'm not drinking it.
You're not going to drink it?
Not right away.
Why? What would you recommend doing first? Boiling it?
Probably not.
Alright, this is Mudlavia Springs water. Tastes pretty good.
Do you recommend it?
Sure.
Mudlavia Springs. Taste the beast.
The water is still bottled and shipped out to a number of water companies, including Cameron Springs and Perrier. So the next time you purchase some bottled water, you very well may be drinking a bit of Mudlavia Springs.